Welcome to the GTN show.
Yes, welcome along. Now, we had thought that all of the discussions on this week's show would be focused on Ironman's adjustment to the Kona qualification. However, we are still going to be discussing it.
But all the headlines this week were stolen by the T100 in Dubai for all the wrong reasons. Plus, the PTO announces a new partner in the Middle East.
All right, I guess we should start with all the drama that unfolded at the T100 in Dubai over the weekend and maybe try and work out why, if we can even figure that out ourselves with quite a lot of reflection on that race. But first, let's just set the scene on where we're at in the season. We've got the series of the race to Qatar with the grand final in Qatar in a few weeks' time. This was the penultimate race in Dubai. And on the men's side, the leader currently is Hayden Wilde, and he couldn't improve on his score. He's got 4 races that gave him maximum points. So he wasn't looking to improve on it. However, some of the athletes were. And the overall series win is a whopping $200,000 all the way down to $70,000 for 10th place. And that's not even mentioning the fact that it was $25,000 up for the win on the individual race here, down to $5,000 for the result just in Dubai on the weekend.
So what happened in Dubai? Well, it was all going according to the script. Morgan Pearson let out the water with quite a few people just behind him. Hayden Wilde was about 75 seconds behind at this point. But he set to work on the bike, caught up to those leaders, and then kind of broke away with Martin van Riel and Mathis Magira for company. And those three basically rode away from the rest of the field. They were putting bigger and bigger gaps into everyone over the 8-lap bike course. In fact, they finished the 8-lap bike course. They went over the 80-kilometer timing match with a 2:20 lead ahead of 3rd Sam Dickinson and 4th Mika Nurt, a 4-minute lead over Gregory Barnaby, and a 5.5-minute lead now over Morgan Pearson. It was basically going to be a 3-way run race between these three. And on the form book, if I was a betting man, I would have said Hayden Wilde takes the win quite comfortably. Martin van Riel in second. He's not been in the perfect form, but he's probably going to be running okay. And Mathis Magira will probably hold off the fast runners behind him for 3rd place. Maybe Morgan Pearson might run his way up to 3rd.
Interesting the names you're dropping in there, James. Well, when it came to what should have been the end of the bike leg, Hayden Wilde leading, seemed rather confused from the bits that I've seen, and went and did an extra lap, shouting that he'd had 76 kilometres on his computer, therefore thinking he had further, except another lap was another 8k. So him, along with Van Riel and with Mathis Magira, did an extra lap. Therefore, it was actually Sam Dickinson who came into, who did turn off at the right time, came into T2, rather confused, along with Mika Newt, and they were looking sort of at the camera and shouting at officials like, what's going on? And then obviously, they'd done it right, so they set off onto the run.
Yeah, the trio who did an extra lap then would come into transition, having done a whole extra 8Ks, or over 8 minutes down on Sam Dickinson, so they'd lost more than 10 minutes with that extra lap, and they were basically out of the running. But that wasn't the end of the drama. Unbelievably, it happened again. So perhaps due to the 3 bikers going the wrong way, maybe. We don't really know what caused it. But they kind of joined in. Hayden Wilde came in literally as Sam Dickinson was finishing a lap. So they ran out of transition together. Hayden Wilde now a lap down on Sam Dickinson. Maybe that confused the timers. But basically, Morgan Pearson had a stormy run to catch everyone. And he was in the lead. And he had basically on his way to win his biggest race of his career. The commentators were calling him into the finish. They were going, this is amazing. He's going to take the biggest win of his career. It's all because Hayden Wilde and the rest of them made a mistake. And then Pearson kept running and headed out for another lap. Now, this was very confusing because the counter on the screen and the counter, obviously, that the commentators were seeing, all were counting down to 0. It said he had like 400 meters left to go. And then he went off to run another 2 kilometer lap, which, confused everyone. Basically, then, straight behind him, in second place, was Mika Nurt, who did go into the finish chute, ran down there and was like, why am I giving
Why is the tape here? He literally, the dear guy, he talked to it, didn't he? That first of all, he was like, I haven't won. And then people were shouting at him saying he'd won. So he picked up the tape and then realised, I think, was starting to kind of clock what happened. So he sort of had a half celebration and then looked really embarrassed and a bit sheepish about the whole thing, whilst just had to wait to see what happened.
And then to compound it, Gregory Barnaby, who was now running in third, It didn't turn into the finish chute, and he ran another lap too. Then Vincent Louis, who thought he was in fourth, did turn into the finish chute and was told he finished in second. Jason West, Jacob, and Jake Bertisel, then they both ran another lap. So those four of them ran another lap, and everyone else went into the finish. It was quite dramatic. The scenes that followed were, I guess, equal parts comical and heartbreaking, because you had these people coming across the line, like Sam Dickinson coming across the line going, oh, well, I guess I salvaged fifth, and then being told he was third, and he was like, whoa, wait, what? And then more and more people were coming on and just being like really confused, all the way down to literally the last person who crossed the line. And that was Morgan Pearson, who thought he was turning into the finish chute to win. And he thought he would have a tape, and he thought he'd have a bunch of people screaming, and instead he was confronted with literally a crowd of all his fellow pros with their back turned to him, discussing who had actually won and what had actually happened in the race. And no one paid him any attention whatsoever. It was heart-wrenching to watch. Yeah. It was really, really sad. So it sounds like, from what we've got, that the Hayden Wild counted wrong on the bike, and there was no counter, and therefore he was wrong to do that extra lap. He was looking at his bike computer that said 76 Ks, and Martin van der Rohe, Matthias Magira followed him incorrectly, and so it was their fault. However, on the run, the counter was wrong, and there was a sign that said, you're on lap 5, you're on lap 6, you're on lap 7, and then go to finish. And it said, Morgan Pearson ignored that because he knew he had one more lap to run.
And he was running with a watch. I think it's worth noting some athletes don't run with watches.
Nico Nurt was not running with a watch, and he saw go to finish, so he went to finish. Other athletes didn't see it and carried on running, or they did see it and they turned into the finish, and it created an accident.
I think it'd be even worse if you were running, looking at your watch, and you saw it like from Morgan Pearson. And you know that some have done some, and some. What do you do? You sort of panic, don't you?
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, there's been various statements from athletes. Some have been a little bit more condemning of it. Martin van Riel being one who has claimed that he's potentially lost thousands, which it looks like potentially he has. We have to sort of unpick all of this. Others have taken a little bit longer on their reactions. I think they've been waiting for the heat to die down and actually see what the T100 have come out with, and then been, I guess, more supportive. It sounds like more of a well-edited version that they've put up that's wanting to not bite the hand that feeds them, so to speak.
Yeah, understandably. So after much protests, apparently, and behind-the-scenes wrangling and discussions, they did eventually decide who the winner was. And what they did was they counted the winner at the end of the 7th lap on the run. So they completely ignored that 8th lap, that 4 of them did extra and the rest didn't, because apparently that's World Triathlon's rules as far as if something like this goes wrong. And so Morgan Pearson, despite coming across the line completely lost and getting absolutely no celebration whatsoever, which he was, I guess, robbed of, did actually take his first T100 win there, ahead of Mika Nurt, who was second, Gregory Barnaby third, Jason West in fourth, Vincent Louis in fifth, Sam Dickinson ends up in sixth, Jonas Schomburg 7th, Hayden Wild all the way down in 8th, of course, having done an entire extra lap on the bike and still 8th, which is pretty impressive.
Exactly. It's very impressive.
Felipe Azevedo in 9th and Peter Hemrick in 10th. Now, there's been lots of discussion on social media, and you can go and read all the athletes' comments about it. There was apparently a vote that happened on how they should
allocate the
final
wins, standings.
And essentially, I guess, in theory, by the letter of the law, they could have gone, well, only 4 of you completed the whole course, and therefore everyone else is disqualified, and we have 4 finishes here. Apparently, the athletes, including those 4 who did extra, voted against that and said, no, we don't want to do that. That's crazy. We don't want that to happen. I don't want to be the winner of the only 4 who finished. So they instated everyone, but on that 7th lap. Will Draper was probably one of the most diplomatic in his comments, and you go onto social media and read it. But he did say, I believe the option for 1st to 4th to go to the 8-lap runners and everyone else to get DQ'd was given, but Morgan, Gregory, Jason and Jake were extremely sporting and believed that the 7th lap of the run would have been the same result as the 8th lap, and so it was agreed amongst all the athletes and officials that this was going to be the outcome. The 3 riders who rode the extra were deemed to have done this at their own fault, which is why the outcome wasn't changed on their behalf. I don't really know where I sit on this. I've gone backwards and forward. I've discussed to a few people with this. I think there is definitely a responsibility on the athlete to count your own laps. And I think also we can say that the route leaves quite a bit to be desired. 8 very twisty, turny laps.
I mean, 8 is a lot to count when you're running at that speed and you're running
Yeah,
at
and
that
it's one thing to
intensity.
say in a world triathlon, count your laps when it's 8 laps, but it's over 40 Ks. When it's 8 laps and you're concentrating for 2 hours, it's that much harder to count. The gaps between 6 to 7 is a lot longer. It's 10 to 12 minutes before you've got to count the next one. It's easy to lose track of your counting. So I do think it's not a very good look for the T100, and it's a preventable and predictable issue.
Yeah.
I will say though, however, this is my overriding thing. If the race organizer is going to take any responsibility whatsoever for counting laps, which they did take some of, by having a lap counting board and a go to the finish sign on the last lap, then you have to take all the responsibility for counting the laps. You cannot expect halfway through the race to go, actually, that's not worked, so now it's your responsibility to count your laps because we said we were going to have this here, but you can't believe it anymore, so just count your own laps. That's very much not fair. Rather just say, we have absolutely no means of counting your laps. It's all on you. Or, if you do have a counting system, you have to 100% believe it, and the athletes did that. And I guess that's why they've gone where they've
Well, I
gone.
was going to say, yeah,
because
they
it's
didn't have it on the
their
bike,
fault.
they had it on the run.
But then, yeah, if they can do it on the run, why don't they have one on the bike so that that same thing doesn't happen? Because no one wants to see the Hayden Wild get taken out of the race by not being able to count to 8.
Yeah, and
not
Morgan
ideal.
Pearce, as much as you'll love the win, it'll always have a little asterisk by it, won't it?
Exactly. Oh, yeah, that
Or a
was
big
that
asterisk.
absolute mess of a race that you won, yeah. I mean, I guess we look ahead to Qatar and they can put it all to right then. Morgan Pearson and Hayden Wild can go head-to-head there.
Well, exactly. Well, thankfully, the T100 did learn quickly from their mistake, and they made sure that this did not happen for the women's. And we had as it turned out, a more straightforward race as it was anyway, because Julie Deron is back, and she is back on form. She obviously missed out on Kona due to an injury she got riding in Switzerland earlier in the year on her build-up. Had to miss that, but she's come back. She's already qualified for next year's Kona, and now this is her first T100 back since that injury, and she just looked in dominant form. She swam at the front with Jess, and then put the power down on the bike. Well, she did actually say that Jess was doing a lot of the work on the bike, and apparently Jess was, looking over her shoulder, and Julie in her post-race interview did say that she just couldn't do more. Jess is so strong, which is, giving respect, but the way she ran, she left Kate Waugh in her sort of weight behind her, didn't she?
Yeah, very impressive. It does set the stage now for a very thrilling showdown in Qatar, because there are actually only 9 points separating the top 3, Kate Waugh, Lucy Charles-Barkley and Julie Deron. And that final obviously counts for 1.5 times as many points. So it is all to play for on the women's race, and that's going to be a very exciting race. So wrap up those top 10 there. Julie Deron, Kate Waugh, Jess Learmonth in 3rd, Georgia Taylor-Brown in 4th, and Holly Lawrence in 5th. That's 4 of the top 5 are British ladies there. Taylor Spivey in 6th, Lisa Pertra in 7th, Lizzie Rayner in 8th, Hannah DeVette in 9th, and Megan McDonald in 10th.
All right, on to the topic that we thought on Friday afternoon was going to be the headline news for this week's show, because Ironman put out a big announcement that I think we all knew was brewing on the qualification system for Kona for next year. Now, they obviously came out with this performance-based qualifying system earlier in the year, and it hasn't quite rolled out how they were hoping, or how they almost sold it to, I guess, us, the viewers, and to the athletes. And they are now going to make immediate changes, and retroactive ones as well as obviously forward-looking ones, to try to find that balance that they were originally looking for.
Yeah, so this was made in consultation with their athlete-led Ironman Championship Competition Advisory Group, which is a representative group of athletes, age groupers from all over the world, who get together on a forum and talk to each other about how this should be solved and what's best for everyone. So it's not just Ironman making the ruling on their own. And basically, the new performance thing was not working the way they thought it was going to work, and so they've decided to make some changes. So first, let's look at what wasn't working. They expected there to be a gender split in the performance pool. Now, we're talking about automatic slots, which is for winning your age group. Those roll down to 2nd or 3rd, not to 4th. For each age group, there's a slot for the win. And then the rest of their slots go into a performance pool based on your relative performance in your age group. In the performance pool, they had expected 80 to 85% of those performance pool slots to go to men, and the other 15 to 20% to go to women. As it turned out, 96% of the performance slots
So far.
were going to men and only 4% were going to women. So that was one of the problems that they'd already noticed.
Yeah, then I mean, also the finisher ratio wasn't quite on board. It's 84.4% were men so far, 15.6% women, and maybe that's sort of self-propagating because the more women are seeing that they're not qualifying, they're maybe a little reluctant on entering these races.
Yeah. Then the next thing that they noticed was that the slots that rolled, that more women were turning down their slots than men. They had expected that 24% of the slots based on the first offer were accepted by women, were offered on the first offer, and only 20% were actually accepted of those. And then they rolled into the performance pool, and when they rolled into the performance pool, they could then go to men or women based on the way you fit on that performance ranking. And so then women's slots were essentially, because they were turned down at first offer for winning your age group, they were then going into a men's pool, essentially.
Well, I preferred men were more likely to get it, weren't they?
Exactly.
I'm not so sure how much these contributing factors that Ironman has sort of officially identified actually make a difference, but they have basically said that a greater percentage of top performing women competed in the 2025 World Championships in Kona compared to men. And that meant that fewer top women have entered 2026 qualifying races. I think that's almost grasping at straws at this point for such a dramatic, numbers that really aren't reflecting. It might be a small contributing factor.
I think it is a contributing factor, though, because if you think about it, if 20% of average Ironman fields are women, and you have, because they were separate world champs in 2025, Nice and Kona, you have the same number, essentially 2,300 women at Kona and 2,300 men at Nice, you are going to see a greater percentage of that 20% of the overall population at Kona than you do of the 80% of the men at Nice. Does that make sense? I don't know whether you followed that. If you followed that, though, that was one of the reasons they gave. The other thing was slot declines. That is, as we said, more women than men were declining their slot. And the reasons that they gave, because they did put out a survey to those women who declined their slots and asked them why. And the reasons were family obligations. They needed more time to decide, whereas a man who got his slot, was offered his slot, just went immediately, yeah, I'll do that, and then I'll figure out the rest later on. The women were like, hold on, I don't know, how much is the travel going to cost? How can I get away from work? Can I get time away from my family? Can I take my whole family with me? I can't make the decision on the spot. I'm going to turn that down. And so more women than men were turning down the slot.
Yeah, so I think the two sort of really key changes that we want to note or that will start to make the difference are the fact that they are actually separating the performance pools in a sense. So the women will only be competing against other women and the men. However, it's then that ratio that how they work that out is different. And it sounds like proportionality. It's not exactly. We'll explain that in a moment. But as a result of this, they'll decide on the amount of slots that are for men and are for women. And then the winners still take their slot. So that stays the same. But if it rolls down, say the top three women don't take it, it rolls down, it stays in the women's performance pool, and the same for the men. So there's no crossover in that sense. So it's not being lost to the overall pool.
Yeah, so a women's automatic slot can't roll to a man. They also have said that they will retroactively apply these to all of the 2026 qualifying races. So that means that they will be offering slots to another 24 women and 8 men who would have earned automatic qualifying slots under the system and didn't previously. They'll also retroactively allocate 44 performance pool slots to women based on the new gender split. So those slots that had previously rolled and then gone into a performance pool that were taken by a man will now be rolled as if they had been rolled to the women only, and they now be offered to those women, which is essentially 68 extra spots that are going to be offered on races that have already happened.
Yes, I think, it's sort of still hard to actually almost see the wood for the trees for all of this because there's been so many changes in this system over the last year. And some people are shouting, oh, it's back to proportionality. And it isn't exactly, because you still have the winners taking their slots or the places. So that's around 45-55% according to all the age groups that are filled. And then on top of that, it's the proportionality. So it actually sways it better. And in theory, this should now be getting it closer to 30% women qualifying at Kona and 70% men, which is what Ironman initially thought that this proposal, their original proposal, was actually going to hit.
Yeah, they did actually say to me that they were of half a mind to just go, well, Kona happened a lot later. That was a women's only race. Nice happened earlier. So we'll probably see this actually correct itself as the new races start and the new season starts. but they didn't want to just wait for that. And they've actually taken some proactive measures here, which is good to see, I think. Basically, it all comes down to everyone wants fairness, right? And also, everyone wants Kona to be exclusive. Like, no one really wants Kona to be just handing out slots. And they have seen this at some races where they had so many slots, they're literally standing up at the slot allocation and going, is there anyone else here who wants to go to Kona? And no one wants to see Kona slot allocations done in that way. And this will obviously stop that. I guess the people that are going to get most frustrated by this are the ones who are on the bubble and maybe on one slot allocation policy would have made it in and the new slot wouldn't have made it in, or vice versa. Those are the ones who are going to be the loudest and the most vocal. Everyone else is kind of like, well, this gets the best of the best at Kona.
Somewhere in the middle ground, isn't it?
Yeah, we're somewhere in the middle. And it's a very difficult problem to solve for Ironman. I think it's probably got to the point now where it's more complicated than it needs to be, but as long as it works out by the time we get to Kona 2026, I think we'll all be happy. So fingers crossed that as we watch this unfold over the coming Ironmans, it actually does equal it out a little bit more. We can all just live in hope at this point. Moving on with some other news, PTO have announced a new partnership with Saudi Triathlon Federation. They've signed a memorandum of understanding going forward, which aims to boost triathlon in Saudi Arabia from grassroots to elite levels, promoting mass participation and healthy lifestyle. The memorandum has 5 key pillars, which are events, hosting international events like the T100. So I guess we're going to see a T100 in Saudi Arabia next year. That full series hasn't been announced yet. Plus establishing a Saudi national triathlon series. Content and marketing, increasing the sport's visibility. Sports development, accelerating development of Saudi national triathletes. Social development, promoting health and wellness through triathlon. And industry development, developing local capabilities in areas like officials and event volunteers. So we've already heard rumors that Jeddah would be the host in 2026.
Potentially in November time.
Yeah, adding a third Middle East triathlon to the T100 series. And soon they're going to have the whole series there on top of Qatar and Dubai. They're splitting the races in 2026 into men's and women's. Are we going to say it's more likely going to be a men's race there given Saudi Arabia's women's?
Or will they make a statement and put the women's race there?
Oh, yeah, there would be a statement. I mean, back in 2017, women were first allowed to drive and first allowed in a sports stadium in Saudi Arabia. But there have been big advances since then. So, maybe it'll be a statement to have a women's T100 race there.
Who knows? It does just feel like the winter triathlon season is just... The season's not going to finish. It's just going to move to the Middle East for those winter months, and then we'll crack back on again in the spring. And kind of, gives us plenty of content, doesn't it?
But there's going to need to be some calendar planning for these pros because they can't just do 12 months of race.
No, exactly not. Well, moving on to something a little more lighthearted, we have some new running world records. This time, the 100-mile world record has just been broken by Katrina Jennings on her first attempt at 100 miles. I mean, apparently it's a very fast course, the 2025 Tunnel Hill 100 in Vienna in the USA. She beat Camille Herron's time that has stood since 2017, which I didn't realise that record has stood for quite so long. It might be a surprise as her debut performance, but she does have a pretty strong pedigree because she ran in the Olympic Marathon back in 2012 and also has the 50 and the 100k Irish records. Then we also saw the 50-mile record being set by Anne Flower at the same event.
Yeah, very impressive running there. Yeah, we also saw Spencer Matthews has started his project of 7 Ironmans in 7 continents in not quite 7 days.
No.
That would be a very impressive. I mean, this is still very impressive. So he's done a full distance triathlon in London. He then flew straight over to Arizona and did Ironman Arizona this past weekend before flying to Cape Town in South Africa to do his 3rd one. He is trying to do 7 Ironmans on 7 continents in 21 days, including the last one, which is going to be in Antarctica.
Yeah, the hardest. So doing all of this for James's Place, a charity for men's mental health, and he's already raising a huge amount of money, so we're going to be following his journey. And he's breaking the record on the time because it's actually been 4 years that the last person managed to do all of these 7, well, an Ironman on all these 7 continents. So,
I said the last person, it's probably the only person who's ever done it before.
I haven't looked at the full background of this event.
He's going to lower that record to 21 days if he does it. And he's on track, so good luck to him.
Now, those of you who've been following GTN and triathlon for a while might well know the name Sam Holness. Now, he is the first openly autistic athlete to complete the World Championships Ironman. And he's going about raising money for some charities, for the autism and adaptive sport charities, with a rather mega raffle. Now, this fundraiser is currently open at the moment until the end of the month with some rather cool prizes.
Yeah, it's a giveaway raffle, and you can win his Canyon CFR DR2 that he actually rode to the 70.3 World Champs just a few weeks ago, worth over $10,000. There's also all kinds of other prizes worth another up to £5,000, including signed memorabilia by Lucy Charles Barkley, by Gustav Eden, and various others. The launch is obviously around his 70.3 Worlds, but as Heather says, to raise some money. Tickets cost £10 each, or 3 tickets for £20, or 10 tickets for £50. And we're going to put the link down below our show so that you can click there and enter if you want to.
Yeah, all for a great cause. Right, on to a rather mega amount of pro athlete retirements. I think it's when you know it is the official end of the season, isn't it? It's been a long and a big season, and we've had a few retirements trickling, and it feels like Ironman Arizona has just been a bit of a waterfall of retirements, because we had 4 women who had already admitted that it was going to be their final race. And Simone Daly, Nee Mitchell, you might well have seen her win. She won controversially and then I think lost her win at Ironman Ireland. She also won Ironman Wales. And with it, she ended up winning Ironman Arizona and would have got the qualification slot for Kona, and then admitted that she's retiring.
Surely you must have had a moment of second thinking and going, well, actually, now that I've won this, maybe I'll just carry on for a few months. Maybe I'll take my Kona.
I guess when it's a year out, isn't it? So you've gone in with that mindset. But congratulations to her on a very strong career. And she's got some interesting things in the pipeline. An athlete who you really must have heard of at some point is Didi Griesbauer. She does a lot of the commentating. She is 55 years old and has been a pro for, I don't know, as long as I've been following triathlon.
I started as a pro, I think. Yeah, a lot longer than I made it. 55 years old, still racing as a pro. And she has also announced, at last, her retirement. Meredith Kessler has also announced her retirement. She completed over 60 full-distance Ironmans. And she's an 11-time full-distance Ironman champion and 23-time half-distance Ironman champion.
Impressive career, isn't it?
And then finally, Jodie Stimpson has also decided she's hanging up her triathlon suit once and for all. She actually did retire before.
Yeah, and she actually said, I'm coming out of retirement. And I bumped into her in Kona, and she'd been training with Danielle Lewis in her build up to Kona, and I think just enjoyed that training and had never done an Ironman. So she's come out of retirement to do an Ironman to then retire again. But sounds like she enjoyed it, and but it wasn't enough to convince her to change her mind, so to speak. Go on.
Also, Hayley Chura announced that this was her final race.
No, she didn't race, sorry. She just announced it. So maybe she was on, I didn't check whether she was on the start line, but I feel she made the announcement a couple of days before the race. So I feel she might have been on that start line and then changed her mind. However, yes, she has made the announcement, but her last race was actually Kona, in fact.
Okay, she's a very good swimmer, led the swim many times.
I mean, she really did. She led the chase pack even just recently, so she was still at the top of her game, but after 12 years has decided that, now's time to call it a day. And
then another one announcing their retirement this week, also Summer Rappaport, not an Ironman racer, but
she
a
never
World
stepped up,
Triathlon
did she?
Series. 7 times World Triathlon Championship Series medalist, Tokyo 2020 Olympian. Summer's career has been quite impressive over the short course, and she's now decided that she's going to hang up her triathlon suit too.
We wish her all the best. We actually, back ahead of the Tokyo Olympics, her performance there, we actually followed some of her training. Some of you guys might remember that.
Yeah, and then in a final bit of news, some sad news here. Ironman 17.3 Mossel Bay happened in South Africa, and unfortunately, 2 men lost their lives in that swim. Separate incidents, apparently, one at around 400-meter mark and another one at around 1,000-meter mark in the swim. Both were responded very quickly by the water safety. Both were taken by ambulance to hospital, but unfortunately both didn't make it. So condolences to them and their family, and to everyone who was there at that race and had to experience that. It's never a nice part of the sport.
Well, it is time to announce our 4 lucky winners of the SR Tri Ergon Saddle. And we have Razvan Ias, DS Sinker, Pedro Rezende, and Heather Pierce. Congratulations, guys. You'll all be getting your very own Ergon Saddle.
Yeah, lucky you. Congratulations. Moving on, it's our final bit of race news, obviously wrapping up the races that weren't the T100 Dubai this past weekend. There was Harvey Bay 100 in Australia, which is one of the historic ones. Amelia Watkinson taking the win there with Roland Crantock taking the men's win. And then Ironman Arizona happened too, as we said earlier. It is kind of the unofficial end of season race. There is actually Ironman Cozumel coming up this coming weekend, which is probably closer to the actual end of the season, but it's a nice opportunity to get an early Kona slot for next year, and then you can go into Christmas having a nice break, knowing that your 2026 is all planned out ahead of you. Britain Simone Daly, as we said earlier, took the win there, ending her professional career with a really good win. She overcame a 10-minute swim deficit and then moved from 11th to 2nd on the bike before running her way into the win. A very, very impressive way to end her career there.
Yeah, it was also, I think we should mention, second place, Rachel Zelinkas, has had a pretty rough 12 months, and I related to that because she basically broke her collarbone, very similar time to what I did. She came back to what looked like fitness very quickly as a pro, you'd expect, and then broke her elbow with a really nasty break on her elbow, and is now back to having just qualified for next year's Kona. So really cool to see her sort of turn that around a bit, and I think, she felt like she needed that.
Yeah, it looked like she was going to actually take the win there, but 2:59 run by Simone Daly caught her right near the end. On the men's side, Dutchman Menno Koolhaas dominated the swim and managed to hold on for the win. He actually beats race favourite and local boy Sam Long by 8 minutes and 29 seconds to take the win. Sam Long actually wasn't sure he was going to start because his wife is due to give birth any minute now, and he actually was not sure. He said in a post just before the race that for a long time, for a good few weeks now, he's been like, please come, so you can come out, and then I can have a few days at home, and then I can go and race Ironman Arizona or Ironman Cozumel, which he's actually also on the start list for. And then in the last 3 or 4 days, he changed his mind to, please don't come, so that I can go and race, which was quite a funny post. The baby didn't come, and actually his wife was on the course to support him, where he got second there. And now he's like, right, no.
Now it's baby focus, then it's Kona.
Full baby focus, yeah, exactly. And we should point out that this was the final Ironman Arizona in Tempe, Arizona. It's been there for over 20 years, but Ironman have discontinued that event for 2026. Now it's time for Tri Spy. And last week, we had this image of a very tanned, lean calf. Yeah.
A very fast calf.
Goes without saying when it looks that tan and lean that it was going to be fast. Jess Kapinski was pretty much the only one who got it wrong, actually. Kasper Stepniak, he said, but it wasn't Kasper Stepniak. In fact, when we chose this photo, it hadn't really been seen in many places, and then it seems to be the photo that's been shared around the world because it's a very good photo of the winner and second place at the 70.3 World Champs. And of course, the calf is none other than Christian Blumenveldt.
Yeah, and a lot of you got that right. Stu Green, Tri Spy KB, he's just behind Yella. Yeah, he was KB's calves. We've got Gilmore and Taylor and K-Boot 6. Well done, guys. You all got it right. You don't get a prize, but you get some kudos.
Yeah, exactly. Bragging rights.
Well, if you didn't get it right this week, you have a chance next week. Good luck with this one.
Good luck. Get your guesses in the comment section down below. So coming up on the show this week, or on the channel this week, Heather's done a race recently.
I have, yeah. It was a fairly big one. It wasn't necessarily a big performance, but it was 70.3 World Champs, and I think a few of you are wondering where that one's got to, but it is coming in the next few days. Keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you again next week.